Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis, that's Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturian Society. Ash made a very
Welcome,
weird face,
everybody.
like
I did it
right at the
again.
beginning.
Yeah, because once again, the voice saying recording in progress was delayed on my end. Apparently, I have like a delay on my end today, so that's going to be fun to figure out. So I'm sorry, guys, if that throws off our audio a little bit at this episode. I try and sync it the best that I can, but some days it's just
Yeah,
like we are speaking at two completely different speeds.
right. Yeah, that's fun. I mean, that happens sometimes anyway, so
Yeah,
who
it's
can
true.
blame the internet, really?
Yeah, seriously, this is just us actually. It's all natural. That over there with the, I think probably faster internet than mine is your host, Karissa Harlow, aka Lewis.
Yes, I lost my I like forgot which one I was when you made that face. I was like, am I wrong somehow already?
I said Lewis, and as I said Lewis, I like was triple checking. I was like, is that correct? It is
Right.
correct. And I am Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien. I have no trouble really remembering that I'm Tolkien, but for some reason I'm like, what's Karissa? The only other
What's
one
the
in
other
our
one?
little inside joke.
Right. Actually, I'm Owen Barfield. So
Just to really throw a curveball. And my memory is so
yeah.
bad, you could probably convince me of it.
Like, yeah,
Why
that
it's
sounds about right.
yeah, it's why it's not fair when I get into arguments with my siblings because they can drag shit up that I have no memory of at all. But because I don't have a good memory, like I'm not a good person to like I don't have a leg to stand on. If I'm like, I don't remember that, they're
Yeah.
like, well, you wouldn't, would you? And I'm like, this is not fair.
Good point.
This could be completely made up, and I have no idea. It also
It's
makes
like
me
that
disbelieve
meme.
people who are saying
Oh,
talking about like their past. I'm like, how do you know? Like when like
yeah.
I was watching this documentary today, and someone was talking about some memory from when they were 5 years old, and I was kind of just thinking, like, I don't want to doubt you, but like I have no
Yeah.
memories of being a 5 year old. So how do you? But I guess some people
Right.
actually do.
That's funny.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah. I was just gonna say it's like that meme where it's the guy, I don't know what show it's from, and he's like, that doesn't sound right, but I don't know enough about this to tell you you're wrong. So we're just gonna go with it.
Yeah, that's me. That's pretty much me
Yeah.
in every argument with my siblings.
Yep.
Oh, that's funny. Well, how has your week been?
Good. I have started watching Stargate Universe, which is maybe the most obscure thing I could have done.
Interesting.
And everyone hates it, but I kind of love it. And I think if any of you know anything about Stargate, someone on TikTok put it this way. They're like, are you a Star Wars fan, a Star Trek fan, or a Stargate fan? And I never heard it put that way. And I was like, yes, I am Stargate because I'm not really into Star Trek. I didn't like the
Hmm.
original stuff. And I'm not
Yeah.
really a Star Wars person.
Yeah.
So I was like, Stargate all the way. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to say that, I should watch all of them. So
Yeah.
I started watching it, and the guy that plays Rumpelstiltskin in Once Upon a Time
Mm-hmm.
is in it. And he is amazing. And this was before Once Upon a Time. And he's like a really unlikable character. But because I love the actor so much, I'm just like, I
Uh-huh.
am on your side all the way. He does terrible things. I'm like, I still
Oh
hope
my
you win.
God.
I hope your coup
Yeah.
wins. I hope that like this terrible moral outrage you've committed actually turns out for the best. Like, I'm so on his side. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't like the show because he was really unlikable, but I really like him. So everything works for me.
That's how I felt on in what was it called? The fairy tale show he was in. I'm still forgetting. You literally just said it. Once Upon a Time,
Once Upon
right?
a Time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
stopped watching like that last season that came out. But before that, I was like, so I know I shouldn't always be on his side, but I kind of am. And I am definitely
Right.
more of a Stargate fan, but Stargate Atlantis. And then I do like Star Trek
Mm-hmm.
Next Gen, but it's like I'm almost like
Yeah.
exclusively a Star Trek Next Gen because I've seen so little
Right.
of the others that I really can't speak
Mm-hmm.
to them at all. So
Yeah. Yeah. My dad is a Trekkie, and I was always just like, I guess I'll take that team because
yeah,
my
my
dad
mom's
is
a
one.
Trekkie. My mom likes the
Yeah.
original, and I'm just like, I just
We watched like one episode in college, and I was like, this is like 15 minutes of nothing happening. What is this?
yeah,
It's
that's kind
very
of what it
weird.
feels like. Like I don't like super dislike it, but I really like
Right.
Next Gen and I love Picard. I just
Mm-hmm.
think he's wonderful. And then Stargate's totally different, but it's more action packed like all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And so so that's
Yeah.
more my speed anyways. But
Yep. But yeah.
anything
So
else
now
this
I'm a
week?
Stargate. Um, no? What happened this week? I don't think anything happened this week. How was your week?
Oh, well, I have another show update too. You guys will all enjoy this because we're all writers here. Do you know that show Castle?
Yeah.
I just started watching it and it's so good.
Yes.
I was
Oh my
rewatching
gosh.
Fruits Basket again. And then Javi was like, watch something new, damn it. And I was like, you know what? I'll watch something new to me that I've heard about. And it's so good. Yeah.
I have never watched it all the way through, but I've seen episodes here and there. And not only does it have Nathan Fillion, who is like amazing, right? It also has the girl that is in one of the Librarian movies. If you've ever seen the Librarian movies, I love those and I love her. And so it's just like a perfect storm of people I like.
I love it.
I should watch it all the way through, but I haven't.
It's good. If you guys don't know, because you're looking for new show recommendations or new to you show recommendations, Castle is a show about a writer. He's a mystery writer who basically starts like shadowing on all of these cases because he's basing his next character in his next series on this like really cool female detective. And it's excellent because it's a little more lighthearted than your typical like crime show, because those can get a little too much for me. And then I end up having to like bow out after like a season because I'm like, I can't do this much anxiety all the time. So it's a little more lighthearted, and it's Nathan Fillion, and he's wonderful and hysterical. And he plays this like kind of like goofy, he's not really a bad boy, but I think they kind of were trying to make him like a bad boy. He's really
he's Nathan Fillion.
Yeah, he's Nathan Fillion. And so I immediately was like, I have to watch it just because he's in it, just to see. Also because he's in Firefly. He plays Captain Malcolm Reynolds in Firefly, and he's very hot. Yep. As Captain Malcolm Reynolds. He's also like he's like an outlaw, right? In that too, but he's like so serious. And that's how I knew him first. So seeing him in Castle being all goofy all the time, I'm just like, what is this? But it's good. It's really so good. So I'm like really enjoying having a new show to watch.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that, watching shows that are new to you also, because sometimes it feels like new shows are just not hitting the spot for various reasons. So you're like, I'm going to go with something classic, but also somehow unfamiliar to me.
Yes, exactly. I want that classic vibe. I'm very stuck in like the early 2000s vibe of TV, and everything that's come out like in the last, it was so good. Everything that's coming out like ever since like I feel like from 13 Reasons Why onward, I just remember kind of tuning out from like media around that time, just because I wasn't interested in anything coming out. And so everything that's come out since then, like aside from a few like hit or miss things here and there, I'm just not really enjoyed very much. So I'm hesitant to watch new things. And so I don't know anything. And so I was, what was it? I was having some conversation with Javi the other day, and I was trying to like describe how he's more hip with the kids than I am, but I legitimately couldn't think of a way to say hip with the kids without sounding like
saying hip with the kids.
Yeah, without sounding like a boomer. And I was like, wait a minute. I like this. This started as a joke, and now I legitimately he's with it. I finally was like, with it is the best I can do. It's still not, I feel like it's still not totally
kind of 90s.
Yeah. It's like not as far off as hip with the kids, but with it was good. There was another one I tried that was even worse than hip with the kids, and I wish I could remember it, because I feel like it takes a certain level of talent to find something even more detached than hip with the kids. But whatever it is, I'm not it. And I'm really enjoying Castle. So you guys go check it out.
So this is another thing I did. Have you watched Stranger Things at all?
Yes. Yes and no. I watched the first 2 seasons. They just get so intense. And so when the 3rd season came out, I didn't watch it. I forget what was going on in my life at that time, but I was just like, I can't do the intense thing right now. And so I didn't watch it because I couldn't handle it. And I was always going to go back to it. And then I didn't. And then this last season came out, and then Javi was watching it in front of me. And I was like, well, now I know things and I can't leave. And so I literally watched the whole 4th season, this whole last season that came out with him. And it was really, really good. But now I can't go back and watch the other one, I feel like, because I already know what happened in it now. So,
I feel like everyone kind of overhyped season 4. Like I just finished it last night, and I liked it. I especially loved that the Max episode with that song, is it Running Up That Hill or whatever, that everyone loves. Like that episode was amazing. But I will say season 3 was just so good for me. Really? Like,
and that's the one I missed.
It was so much better.
I really love season 4. So the fact that you're saying that makes me like curse myself for not watching season 3. I need to
Yeah.
watch it. I think it also had like really strong like summertime vibes for season 3.
Mhm.
And whenever it came out, I was just not in a summertime vibes kind of mood. I'm very seasonal. I probably said this before. I'm
Mhm.
extremely seasonal about like what I will watch or engage in.
Right.
I don't know why. It's like a thing that like gives my soul peace. Like as soon as like September hits, I'm like, time for everything is spices and the color orange. And then as soon as we hit like January, it's all winter. And then we hit spring, and pretty much spring and summer, I feel pretty similarly about, but I only enjoy it for a very short period of time. The rest of the time, I'm just trying to live as if I'm not in summer. So,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's hard because it's awful stuck in this in between, because I can't like force fall to come sooner. So like I can't watch like my fall shows and movies or read my fall books yet, but I don't like a lot of the summer ones. So anyway, summer's a hard season to be me. I just feel like I don't fit very well in summertime.
Aw.
Which is funny because I'm a mermaid and I should be in the water. But if I'm literally the only time that I like summer is if I'm in the water. And then I'm so happy. But I don't have water around me right now. At some point in the future, it is my dream to have a pool. If we ever get to that, I'm sure I'll be a big fan of summer because I'll play in the pool all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Anyways, that's pretty much my week and a
That's pretty
diatribe
much
on how to live by the seasons. You guys are welcome.
You're so funny. I love summer. So, I mean,
No.
totally different. But I don't
just
like
like
summer
fall.
books, like books that tend to come out in summer. It's always like the contemporaries and the romances and the fun stuff. And I'm like,
I think that's part of it.
But I like the season. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just
I
depends.
like summer for a little while. I get really excited when summer first hits because I'm like beach and swimming and popsicles and watermelon and summer stuff. And then I'm pretty much like, yeah, I'm over this now. Like this week, it's so, my sister's calling me and I promised that I would give her a shout out because she gets mad because she calls me a lot during recording and I just don't answer the phone. And so she gets, I just ignore it, or I text her, hey, I'm recording. And so she demanded a shout out. So here's your shout out. My sister Maddie is calling me. And actually on that note, she just did some really cool art for the Scriptarian Society that's going to be up soon. So it's good.
Yeah.
So relevant. And thank you, Maddie. And that's her shout out. And now she's distracted me just like a little sister. So I don't know what I was saying.
What were we talking about? Oh,
I said
oh my
something
gosh.
about popsicles.
You said something about watermelon.
And watermelon. Yeah, summer stuff.
The last thing I remember was me saying that I don't like summer books.
Yeah.
And that's just because I like the more intense. I really like the books that tend to come out in fall and winter, because that's where it tends to be. Like they have schedules at publishing houses. It's usually like the fantasy and sci-fi and the dystopias that come out that time of year.
Yeah, I think
and
that's
it's just because kids are going back to school, and then winter you have breaks and vacations, and that's when people read that kind of stuff, I guess. I feel about winter the way you feel about summer. I am over it so fast. And fall, everyone's always like, I love fall. I'm like, I'd rather it be like warm enough outside to not wear 10 layers, but cool.
Yeah, I don't love winter as much either. But I feel like all of these dispositions though are very much for like city version of me. Like when I'm living in the city, I have no use for winter and I have no use for summer. However, now that I'm like living out on the farm, and I'm literally, that's what I was going to say. It is going to be 110 degrees next week here. Okay. And extremely humid at the same time. See, exactly. And so it's
not
intense.
That here, but yeah.
Yeah, but we have the humidity here, which just is like worse because it's like, not only are you being baked, you're also being like drowned at the same time. And usually we get like a week or two of this in August. It's weird that we have this in June, but regardless, this is the week I have to get my garden ready, or I'm not going to have anything to harvest at the end of the season. And so I'm literally waking up early every day. And I'm going to have to next week too, because the only time I can work outside without just dying is early morning. And so that's what I've been doing. And I don't really mind too much. And I also realized without summer, I don't have a long enough growing season to have vegetables to harvest. And so I'm like a little more like, it's almost like when you rely on the earth for things more, you're like, okay, I don't love all of the seasons, but I do appreciate the purpose of each one now. Cause like I can't, if you skip one, Yeah, you skip one and it messes everything up. And also, so now for winter, I'm like, don't usually like winter at all. But now I'm looking forward to it because I'm like, I can go outside in like my coat and like my boots and work. And I probably won't get really hot right away, which is nice. And I can't prune any of the trees until winter when they're dormant because you're not supposed to. And so there's a season for everything. And I think I'm going to appreciate all the seasons more. I mean, I do already. It's summer and I'm not like really mad about it. I just prefer fall. I just live for fall, but because it's my favorite season. But I am like, I do need the summer. It's more like before I was like, what's even the point of summer? What's even the point?
Right. Now you're like, I get it, but please go away still.
Yeah. I'm like, now I get it, but I'm just kind of hoping I wake up one day and it's fall. Like, and it's just, we've passed through summer. All my crops have grown and I'm good to go. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I just need my like little 5-year-old memory to come back where it just like blanks out a whole season for me. Anyways, do you have any book recs?
Oh, I didn't even think about this one. No? Did I read anything this week?
No.
I've been mostly watching some shows, so no reading. I recommend Stargate Universe if you liked Rumpelstiltskin and Once Upon a Time.
That's hilarious. You're like, no book recs, but show recs. And I also gave you guys a show rec. This is now show rec corner. Actually, I do have a book rec for you guys. So we are about to start season 4 of our sister podcast, That Pretentious Book Club. And our tradition is to start with a Jane Austen. And I have never read Northanger Abbey before, but we did. That's what we started this season with, or we're starting this season with. I'm actually recording that episode tomorrow. And you guys, first of all, I had just had no idea. This book is short, first of all, which is really nice. Like this is a very short one compared to all of her other stuff. And it was so fast paced and it was so interesting. And I mean, it might be my favorite read. I think it might be my favorite Jane Austen to read. My favorite story is still Pride and Prejudice because I'm in love with the characters and all of like the subtext and everything. And just the entire vibe of Pride and Prejudice. But I think for my favorite read so far, Jane Austen, Northanger Abbey. So if you guys are intimidated, I would say start with that one if you want to get into Jane Austen because it was short. It was a pretty speedy read. It started out with like, usually the heroine of the story is like supposed to be like pretty and graceful. Catherine was not any of these things. And I was like, strong start. So
already into it. Let's go.
Yeah, it was really good. So I do book rec for that one. What about
cool.
our
I'll have to read that one. I haven't read it.
Yeah, it's good and it's short, which is nice. What about our word of the week?
All right, our word of the week is Zaftig. 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 And it means having a full rounded figure, pleasantly plump or well proportioned.
Zaftig.
Yeah,
that is interesting. My cat Yennefer is Zaftig. Is that correct?
It is usually it usually refers to women like in a positive way, but you could probably use it for like cats and other things.
Instead of being like her seductive curves, you would say she's seductively Zaftig.
Yeah.
I
think so.
Interesting. This is good because you bring women. Yeah, exactly. I like how you bring words in. Then I'm like, how can I mash this into the most awkward sentence I possibly can?
On the fly.
On the fly, on the go with a word that I haven't heard until the moment before you said it. It's good. Zaftig. I like it. Teamwork.
Yeah.
All right.
And it begins with a Z, which is just like super fun. I like words that begin with Z.
There's how many are there? It's like the little chart they put up in elementary school, how it's always zebra at the end because duh, it's the only thing.
There's nothing else.
But now we could do Zaftig. We could be teaching kindergartners the word Zaftig. And when their parents are like, what did you learn at school? You're like, Mommy, today I learned that you're Zaftig. And then they'll look it up and be like, thank you.
Yeah.
Also, why is this what my child is learning?
Right.
It's good.
Anyway, well, teach your kids Zaftig and moving on.
What is our theme this week?
We're going to be talking about the chosen one trope.
Ooh.
I will admit, I love this trope. So how do you feel?
Too. Yes, yeah. I was like, if she's gonna be really critical of this trope, I mean, I do have a lot of criticisms of the way this trope is done, but I was like, I do love this trope. I think we all love this trope a little bit because I think we all want to kind of feel like the chosen one a little bit, like in our own lives. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's just if that's an inherent thing or if we've just seen the chosen one trope in every single form of media from our birth. So I don't know if it's like, I don't know if this is a nature or nurture thing, but I do think that pretty much all of us like the chosen one trope.
Right.
Yeah.
At least to some degree, I would think so.
Yeah.
And I think what I personally like about it, and probably is part of the reason for most people, is that it makes, I don't know, it makes it feel like you have a purpose in life, right? Because that's like the
Yeah.
chosen one thing is like, this
Yeah.
person is specifically designed to handle this problem.
Yeah.
And so it makes you, you can kind of take that on yourself and say like, okay, now I have a purpose. And I know some people kind of, there's like the idea of destiny and fate, or whether or not everything is totally free will. And I tend to think the answer is somewhere in the middle. And I think
I
the
agree.
chosen one, when done right, does that. It's like,
totally
okay, so
agree.
you have a purpose. Now, are you going to choose to go with it or not? And I just think that's perfect. So I like it.
That's good. I think so too. What was I going to say about the chosen one trope? I don't remember. Go ahead with your next point, because I'm sure you've written stuff down and I have not.
I haven't, but let's see what I can do on the fly. I guess I'll start with a problem with the chosen one trope is, so like I said, it's like this balance between destiny versus free will. I think if you go too far to the side of destiny, it can start to feel cheesy. So like, I mean, destiny, I like destiny as a theme and whatever, but if your protagonist is the chosen one, and that means they don't have to work very hard for things, or if it's like a magical power thing and they're like, sweet, I nailed this on the first try, or if it's a leadership role and it's like, why is everyone listening to this 16-year-old? And that can just feel really unrealistic. And not only does that ruin the idea that I can relate to it, because there's no way I'm going to be able to master things that fast, but it also just makes for a really boring story because there aren't as many challenges. So I think that's a big problem with the chosen one trope. And so I think people should shy away from that. I think that's kind of the big problem. I'm thinking of like good examples of it. So like Harry Potter, classic example, he's like a chosen one. I think he's a good chosen one because he struggles with like his dark side, and he has, problems with his friends, and he struggles to master certain types of magic. I mean, it's not something that just comes to him. And also, I mean, debatably, what made him a chosen one is really kind of up to chance. I mean, it's like, there was a prophecy and everything, but really it was just based on the person Voldemort happened to attack when he was weakest. Slight spoiler, I guess. And so I think that's kind of the perfect like mingling of things where you're chosen for something that is maybe out of your control, but then when you put work into it, you like become the perfect embodiment of it. So going too far I also think going too far free will side can be a struggle, because that implies that everything is just random chance, and I guess you can go with that, but I just tend to not like stories about that as much. That's just a taste thing, but going too far the side of fate and destiny can be a certain problem.
I think the chosen one trope is great because it's so useful also as a plot device, because typically with a chosen one, there's something that they're supposed to accomplish. And so it kind of gives you like this overall goal for your plot, which is amazing, because sometimes that can be really hard to pin down. So when you have the chosen one trope, you should definitely know, you should have a very clear idea what the conflict is in your story and what the conflict for the overarching series is, because typically for the chosen one trope, that is already established within that. But also, like Karissa said, like you want the one that you choose, your character that is the chosen one should feel realistic and almost random enough that your readers could think that could be me. And that's the thing with Harry Potter, because like you said, like it's the prophecy or whatever is more about there being a chosen one. It's not about, and this one specific child will be the chosen one.
Right.
And I think because that makes it more of an exclusive thing. And that like feels like you can't relate to it as much, because who's going to say that you're like the already chosen one, right? Because like you want your readers to empathize. And part of, I think, why people like the chosen one trope so much is because we like to think, oh my God, what if I was the chosen one? So you want your readers to get to experience that like full on like embodied empathy for the character. So I think keeping it kind of like it could have been anyone, but it was this one who was the chosen one.
Right.
That's the vibe that we all want the most. Like that felt like Aragon, I feel like, is a big chosen one. Who comes to mind for me. And he's just like literally just like a normal chill farm boy. It's more about like the history of his, like the family, if I'm remembering correctly, like the guy who raised him and stuff. It's more like the sequence of events that led up to where he is, and his existing is nothing like crazy out of the norm, but all of the things that had to happen for him to exist just make it so that naturally he would be the chosen one in that story. So I think it's like when you're picking the chosen one, it shouldn't be about because that character has anything special particularly. It should be that the circumstances surrounding their existence are special or unique or significant to the history of the story or the plot or the conflict or whatever it is. Because I think that's what gives you a really solid, really realistic chosen one trope. Because then also, like Karissa said, your chosen one should be very bad at being the chosen one, at least in some ways. Like, and at least at first, like they can get good at it later if you're going to like do series style. But a chosen one who's just like, and I'm naturally good at everything, or at whatever the thing they're chosen for is, that's unrealistic. Your readers won't relate to that because there's none of us pick something up and are amazing at it right away. Even if it's something we pick up and we have a talent for, like we're not amazing prodigies for most of us. Yeah. So yeah, I think those are all of the reasons that I love the chosen one tropes when they're done correctly.
And I think too, so like you don't want to make your chosen one super perfect. You also don't want to make them so incompetent that it's unreasonable they can achieve anything at all.
And give that to their friend character. That's for the comedic relief character.
Exactly. Nothing is particularly coming to mind, but I know this has happened where the character is just so bad at everything, and then they just have like one moment where they're good at it, or it just comes to them suddenly in the moment they need it most. That's really frustrating, because that's just, in plot in general, you don't want to Deus Ex Machina the whole thing. You don't want to just come out of nowhere with it. And so having a character that can build to the place where they are good at it, like with Aragon, he goes through training and he does eventually become good at it. It just takes time and effort and natural talent. But if he were to just never get good at it and everyone is still like, we're totally behind you, man, that would be super weird. So also don't do that.
I think that I've seen it done way more often with female like heroines, like female chosen ones who are like really clumsy, right? They just like, wait, she's so bumbly. She runs into everything. She falls down. It's usually like really physically clumsy or like maybe kind of socially awkward. I don't know why that's only applied. I've only seen it applied to female chosen ones. I think it's a little silly.
It's main character form.
In main character form. It's weird. I like Kelsey Hayes in the Tiger's Curse series. That is a hardcore chosen one, but she's like really clumsy. It's implied she has these magical powers and then she doesn't really know how to use them, but then at the right time, suddenly she's okay at it. And either make her bad at it, like consistently, like if she has bad aim, like since she has bad aim, she can get a little better, but she's not going to one chapter be bad aim and the next chapter be like a crack shot. Like that's not going to happen.
Exactly.
So if it's like about like her chosen one being the one to like release these tiger princes from their curse, that's the concept for the series. Well, then you think that she would be, I don't know. I mean, she's like makes really weird decisions about her relationships too. So I'm like, I know that's the crux of the whole series, but Kelsey Hayes it's for the angst, but as a chosen one, like Kelsey Hayes could have been a little more competent for my taste. Because I felt like she was unrealistically incompetent. Like we're all a little incompetent here and there, but like, and I think it's for comedy's sake, maybe, or maybe it's because women don't like to present it. Typically, I don't know if it's female writers or people in general just don't want to like present like confident female characters who are somewhat self-possessed, because society has never really liked those very much. And we would rather have a female character we're not intimidated by, who's kind of bumbly. I don't know if that's what it comes from or what, but I'm a little done with the over bumbly chosen one girls, because the boys never are. It's just the girls. And it's like, what do you think? She's going to be too intimidating if she's just like a reasonable person with some flaws, but not like comically bad at things like walking.
I always think it's really interesting that people are like, if we make this woman too competent, she'll be intimidating. I'm like, gosh, it's bare minimum. That's what intimidates you.
I know. They're like, if we make her not trip and run into things and run her mouth off before she thinks, like, if we don't give her all of these things, she's going to be too intimidating. And I'm like, those things are like baseline skills. Like we're all a little clumsy now and then. We all run our mouth off a little bit now and then, but like generally there's a level of baseline competence most of us have. So why do so many female main characters especially with the chosen one trope not have a baseline? Like they could be clumsy here and there, but their baseline is like so low for these things. And it's just, I don't like it. I think it's, I can't think of any purpose except to make the main character like not as intimidating or more quote unquote relatable. She could still be relatable without being like bumbly.
Yeah. If you're intimidated by basic ability to walk without tripping, that's a you problem.
That's definitely a you problem. It's super a you problem. And you should not have to care if anyone is doing that on purpose with your characters, or maybe you're looking back and you're like, oh, I didn't do it on purpose, but it's kind of like that. Maybe just consider in the future, like you don't need to make your female characters less intimidating so that boy readers or girl readers will like them or relate to them. Like they should be relatable because they're realistic.
Right. Unless that's going to play into their character in some way. Like, are the people in the story underestimating them in some capacity? And that can play into things. Like if you're going,
that might be part of it.
Yeah. You have to give just like any protagonist, you have to give your chosen one flaws and strengths.
Yeah.
But a variety of flaws would be nice. And also, if you're going to give them flaws, make sure that they either turn them into strengths or that they have enough strengths to overcome that.
Yeah.
So that it's not totally unreasonable that they're the chosen one.
I think some of the best chosen ones are just a part of this preference is just because the best chosen ones that I've seen are just like the average Joes, and the ones that come to mind are mostly dudes because those are the characters and like the chosen one tropes that typically are the most average Joe-ish. But like Percy Jackson, he's not particularly good at a lot. He's not particularly bad at a lot. He's like good at some things and bad. Like a normal person, he has some things he's really good at and some things he's not. He's just your average Joe kind of kid. And it's the same Aragon, same average Joe kind of person. Like, yeah. Anyway, so those are just like some of like the first two that come to mind for chosen one that I'm like, they're relatable people because they're not super bumbly and they're not super talented. They have some talents and some flaws. Yeah, I don't know. I just think those are the ones that people will relate to the most. No, you're good.
Yes, I agree. I'm like trying to time it when you're done. I think one of the reasons they are so likable too is all of them, so Harry Potter, Aragon, and Percy Jackson, if I remember correctly, all the ones we brought up, they all have like prophecies surrounding them. But the fulfillment of the prophecy is not something that's inherently inevitable. It's something that requires them to make the right choices to get there. And they have some wiggle room, like they can make mistakes and it still works out, but ultimately they have to make the right choice. Like, I don't know, light spoilers. Percy has to make the choice to, what does he even do? Does he kill Kronos? He doesn't kill Kronos. He lets someone else do it. I don't even remember. I need to reread those. But whatever it comes down to, the fulfillment of the prophecy there is more him making the right call in the right moment and like who he is as a person, as opposed to this great magical power. Like, yes, he's the son of Poseidon, but it's not necessarily that makes him the chosen one.
Yeah.
It's just like the thing that puts him in the right category, but then he has to make choices to get there.
Yeah, I think the chosen one thing should really just be more considered. Like, I think the chosen one just might not be like, maybe it's not the accurate name for the trope, but it's the one that we all know it by. It's really more like the right place, right time trope, because it's like an average character who is not necessarily a chosen one because they are a special magical human being, but because they happen to be born in right place, right time to be the one who can fulfill that prophecy, or can be that quote unquote chosen one in this for the sake of the story, but like not because they themselves like earned it by being special, more special than everyone else.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be interesting too to see, I don't even know how this would work, to do like a failed chosen one kind of thing where like they make the wrong choice and then what happens? Does someone else come in and make the right choice? Or does everything fall apart? Because I don't know. The chosen one thing is very like, if you have an English lit degree, you know that like the Bible plays into basically every wave of literature that exists. It plays it like all the references, all the stuff. The chosen one is kind of an archetype of Christ, right? Because it's like this person that's gonna like save everyone. And so it's really interesting to think about like how things in the Bible play out, and how like sometimes people make really, really bad choices and it either
Oh
works
my
out or
God,
someone
yeah.
new comes in to make up for it. And it's like,
Mhm.
it, like biblically speaking, all destined, but also free will. Maybe that's probably why I like that middle
Yeah,
ground
you
so
like the
much.
middle ground.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I just think I don't really know where I was going with this. I just wanted to make that point that it is kind of like a
Yeah.
Christ like origin
Yeah, for of the
kind of
chosen one
thing.
trope.
That's like
I
kind of where it
agree.
originated. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Um,
to your point about the free will versus destiny thing, and especially how it can be useful when you're building a chosen one trope, is that like this is what I think about life too. And I've been having this conversation a lot with Hobby. I feel like I feel like a lot of the like I don't really necessarily am someone who believes that God has a very specific plan for each and every one of our lives, because to me that would make
mhm,
be like, well, then why free will? I mean, I get that it's
right.
like, well, you can choose to be part of the plan or not, but I still feel like that's a little bit too narrow for what I think makes more sense, which is I think that God, at least based on what I obviously believe in God, based on like what I've like studied and stuff about him and like known and learned, I feel like he opens doors and you can choose to walk
Mhm.
through them or not. And so
Yeah.
maybe he has like a big overarching plan, just like you have a big overarching plan for your story. But that prophecy and the
Mhm.
chosen one is just one part of it. And instead of viewing it like the prophecy is like these very like this very specific path that your character has to walk to reach the end, I think it's more
Mhm.
like you need to give your character opportunities, doors that they can choose to
Yes.
walk through or not. And even if they refuse one door, maybe there's another door that can lead to the same conclusion. Because I think
Mhm.
in my opinion, I think like when people say God works like and God has a plan for your life and stuff, I think it's more like that kind of thing where like you have a
Right.
lot of options and there's not necessarily one destination for where he wants your
Mhm.
life to go, and you can choose which doors to go through or not go through, and maybe one is better than another, or maybe some of them lead to the same place just because they do.
Right.
So I think that if you kind of think about like chosen one and prophecy stuff more like that, like it's more about where they get to at the very end, not how they get to it, then you can have a lot more room to play with your character retreating from the prophecy or not doing what people want him to do or what they say the prophecy does, or trying to walk away from the calling, which is like an interesting choice that typically the chosen one makes around like usually was it like
Act
this,
one.
yeah, like act one, and then there'll usually be some doubt again at like the 2/3 of the way through, and then they like renew their vigor or whatever to try and like
Yeah, their
stick to it or
motivation.
whatever. Yeah, their motivation. So
Mhm.
there's like a whole formula you guys can like look up on that, like the people are like when you're chosen
Hero's
one should
journey.
yeah, the hero's journey, when they should
Mhm.
like question themselves and when they should actually truly take up the cause. And I just think that I think with prophecies, I think the vaguer you can be, the more power, not more power necessarily, but the more freedom you have to build a really interesting story that people can relate to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it also depends. So you're kind of saying that like where they get to is kind of the important thing. And I think that's true. But I also think
Yeah.
it really matters what kind of a person they are. And this is why
Mm-hmm.
having incompetent or annoying chosen ones is like really bad. Don't do that. When you make them competent, when you give them character and they are the type of person that is going to choose certain directions for their life, that's what kind of gives a certain inevitability to them
Yeah.
fixing the problem. So like I think
Yeah.
that's kind of how God works. He makes people certain types of people that will choose certain things at certain times. And it is
Mm-hmm.
still your choice. And you can choose to do something different, but he knows what kind of a person you are and what choices you're going to make. So that's kind of what you need to do with your character. You don't choose the route they go down. You just make them the type of person that is going to make certain decisions at certain,
Yeah. You make them the
places
kind
in
of
the
person
journey.
that
So like
has the potential to fulfill the prophecy, whether or not it's
exactly.
completely certain that they're going to or not. They
Right.
have the potential. They're the kind of person who could do it because they're a
Exactly.
competent person. So you do want them to be specific enough that you look at them and you go, this person has the potential to fulfill this prophecy. But you also want them to be
Mhm.
like relatable enough that your readers go, oh my God, it could be me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you were talking, the example that came to mind is like from Narnia, which kind of makes sense.
Uh-huh.
And there's like this part, I think it's in line and the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Lucy and all the Pevensies are trying to cross this gorge or something. And Lucy sees Aslan across the way, and he's like, "Come this way," and she's like, "Guys, we should go this way." Don't listen to her, and they go a different way. And then later on, she asks Aslan what would have happened if she had followed him that way, and he's like, "It doesn't matter. That's not the path you chose. Like, move on. That's it
Yeah.
didn't happen. So it
Didn't
doesn't matter
So
what would have happened. And I
yeah.
think that's kind of how it works too, that like there are many different paths you can take, but whatever path you don't take is not, you might still end up in the same place. They do in that scene, right?
Yeah.
They still end up where they need to be. Is it a little
Yeah.
more difficult than it needed to be? Probably, but
Yeah.
they still end up where they're supposed to be because they're the type of people that made that choice.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what came to mind. And so I think it
I think
depends what
that's
kind of person you are, what kind of dynamics you're working with different characters. And that's where you really get to if people can fulfill chosen one tropes.
I agree.
So, go on.
I think it's and I think that it's something where you want your readers and maybe a couple of the other characters to see that potential in your chosen one, but it is okay for your chosen one to not see it in themselves because we all have self-doubt. So you don't want your character to be like, I feel like Kelsey Hayes level of like self-questioning, because I'm like, girl, where is any of your confidence? But
Yeah.
like a little bit of reasonable self-doubt
doubt.
at least, for sure. And typically the chosen one trope has these characters doing some really wild stuff that it would be like, oh my gosh, can I do this? This seems so overwhelming. Yeah. So let your characters have that reaction too. I have noticed when the chosen one trope has been done kind of poorly, the characters, it's almost like the opposite of the bumbling ones. These characters are like too competent. They're like too special. Yeah. Like they're like, I was born for this. And like, they don't have no any fear. Of that normal self-doubt. Yeah. No fear. These tend to be the characters that are good at stuff right away. So just something to consider. Even if they are really good at stuff and competent, give them some self-doubt. Maybe they have like maybe it's the reverse, but like give them a weakness, give them like some internal or external weakness, but don't let them be completely weak, internal and external, or completely strong, internal and external. Like there needs to be a variation there.
Yeah. And it is interesting, like the chosen one can either like totally accept it or be really in doubt about it. It is interesting how many stories will go the direction of them denying it and really not wanting to be the chosen one. And I've heard people bring up, it's like, if I was the chosen one in a magical world, I'd absolutely take the chance. Like, what are you even talking about?
100%. 100%.
So I think variety is also something here. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons people really like Harry Potter and Percy Jackson and Aragon, because these are people that really took up the call and they're like, this sounds awesome. This sounds like an adventure. I'm in. Yeah. Instead of being like, no, I could never do it. And they experience out along the way when they're like, wait, I have to defeat who? And I have to do what now? Instead of that initial, like, it's almost kind of like that Mako mermaid thing. Like, I don't know if we've referenced this on the show before, where we're like, boys and girls react differently to things happening to them. So like, if you realize that magic existed, girls are going to be like, we have to keep this quiet at all costs because they might experiment on this. And guys are going to be like, let's go tell everyone because this is so cool. So that might also be a reason that the male protagonists in The Chosen One just tend to work a little better. That's like true. Right now, because they have the attitude of, I am so in, let's do this. And then they experience doubt later. Whereas girls are going to be like, okay, let me analyze can I do this? Should I let them rely on me? And so that might also, I don't know, maybe go a different direction there or lean into one of those if you have a male versus female protagonist.
I agree. I think whatever you pick, just lean in fully. Like, just know what your approach is. Like, really know the prophecy, know the end goal, be okay not being really specific with the prophecy, give your character confidence, competence, and then at least enough self-doubt to make them realistic. Just know really specifically what you're doing and where you're taking a character. Yeah, that's what I would say. I feel like a lot of times the chosen one trope is just like, I don't know if just the prophecy, their prophecy is just not well thought out enough. I think it's either that's the root of the problem, or the root of the problem is that the character is just not realistic because they're too confident or not confident enough. And so I think that those are probably the two biggest issues that can take down like what otherwise would have been a really good chosen one story.
I think another thing too, you keep mentioning Kelsey Hayes. I feel like we're roasting her. That's okay. She's not real.
Guys, it's still one of my favorite series.
I know, it's so funny.
The Tiger's Curse series by Colleen Hook. Because rereading it, I was like, it has a lot of issues. Like, if you're analyzing it as a writer, it just has some like structural issues and some character issues. But I love the setting. I love the Indian mythology. I love all the adventure scenes. It's like Indiana Jones, but like with hot Indian prince tiger men. So like, what's not to love about it? Rereading it as a actual young adult versus like a high schooler, I was just like, oh my God, Kelsey Hayes, like, I need you to have a little more confidence in yourself. But when I first read it, I did not have that reaction. So part of that is just that probably grown a little bit as a
Aged.
person too. I've just aged is part of it. But it's one of my favorite series, but not for craft. So that's why you guys will hear me reference it a lot, is because God, if the craft had been done well, could you imagine this book? Oh my God.
I know, right?
It would have been like absolute, like 5
Top
pinkies
tier.
up, top tier favorite book I would be screaming to the world about. As it is, I'm still like, yeah, it's a really fun read. There's a lot I love about it. And then I keep using it as examples of bad writing here and there. Yeah.
But that's okay. Anyway, I think that like one of the things that I don't know if we're skirting around it or whatever, but I think part of the problem with Chosen One, and again, I think this is something that tends to happen with female protagonists more than male protagonists, is that writers try to shoehorn the romance in.
Yes.
And just reasonably speaking here, if your goal is, I have to save the world, are you thinking about a love interest that much? Is that your priority? If it is, are you the kind of person that's going to make the right choices when it counts? Like, I mean, romance is fine. Romance is great. But if you're going to put a romance in a Chosen One book, maybe that's what ruins their ability to be the chosen one, right? Because they're too focused on themselves and this romance.
It's a distraction.
It's just so hard to, I assume, I've never done either, but to save the world and also be like in a love triangle or have like all this angst going on with a boy. And I mean, I liked a lot of that when I was a teenager, right? I've kind of grown out of some of that stuff, but it certainly is enjoyable. But I don't know that it works super well in Chosen One tropes, because I think it takes too much attention away from what they are the chosen one for. And so I think sometimes that's what a weakness of a lot of Chosen One books is too. I'm not saying you can't put a romance in. I'm saying be proportional with it. Either make it just one love interest and they're getting to know each other. Percy Jackson did this, you get to know each other over time and it's good. And, there might be a little bit of like, I might like this other girl a little bit too, but really it's Annabeth, right? So you can have the romance and it can build over time, but to make it a disproportionate priority on the part of the person that is supposed to save the world, I just find that unrealistic. I would hope that most of us wouldn't be that selfish. I mean, realistically, would we? Probably, but then there need to be consequences to that. That could be a really interesting take on it.
It could be. Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
I agree. I think that the romance that in a Chosen One book, typically the whatever quest the Chosen One is on, that is the focal point of the book. So to make the romance of the book an equally big focal point doesn't make sense. It's like you're stuck between two genres. Either it's like a romance fantasy or it's a like Chosen One adventure fantasy, whatever it is. But you kind of get stuck between the two when you try and make them equally important. That does not mean though that you can't have romance. I think you can even do love triangles, but it has to take such a backseat. And like you said, like it is a distraction from the main quest. Like it is, and it should be a distraction. Like, I mean, how your character deals with distraction can vary. They could do well or they could do badly at prioritizing things, but it should be presented at least some of the time as a distraction, not as part of the main quest, unless you've got like this amazing prophecy that somehow weaves the romance of these fated lovers into it, which is, I've seen done a lot. I've not seen it done a lot well. So just go with caution on that one. But I think as a good example, where did it go? I had a really good, yes, here we go. Shadow and Bone. The Shadow and Bone series, I think, is a great example. Yeah, because Alina is essentially the chosen one in the story. She has a lot to accomplish. And while we basically see her, and there's a couple different dude characters that the readers tend to ship her with, but Mal is like the main guy or whatever who she grew up with. And so at the beginning, before all of the chosen one stuff really kicks off, like we see a lot more of her interest in Mal and her feelings about Mal. And then basically they start to kind of grow together. The chosen one, the quest kind of just takes off running. And then for the rest of the series, Mal is basically battling for her attention. And she is torn because she loves him, but she basically tells him like, spoilers, I guess, like, I don't have time to focus on this right now. I have to be this big thing for so many people for this like war that's happening right now. And so Mal kind of recognizes that, but it causes a lot of tension. And there's a lot of active tension in the series about this like struggle for what do I pay the most attention to. And I mean,
and Alina, it causes her to make mistakes.
It does. It causes her to make mistakes, and it causes him to make really big mistakes. So I think that was an excellent way to do it. I think if you are writing a book and you don't want romance to be the primary element, I think following like a ratio formula like the Shadow and Bone one, I think that was an excellent ratio of romance to like main character quests type stuff. Yeah. If you want to do a romance fantasy, that is fine. That will be something more like Tiger's Curse, which is fine. I mean, I really loved it. A lot of people love that book. It's not a bad book by any means. It could have been craft-wise a far superior book, but it's still good. And I mean, you could even do something like that and make the craft really good. It's just harder. So, I mean, just know what your goals are so you know what you're going to have to achieve. I think that doing something like Shadow and Bone is at least that ratio of romance to main quest stuff. I think that's easier than trying to do a Tiger's Curse type ratio really well. But not to say it can't be done. I don't think I can do it, but I'm sure it can be done.
Right. I think it's just about proportionality. Like, and I understand when we're talking YA, teenagers make dumb choices. They make mistakes, like totally. I mean, adults do too, but teenagers tend to make like overly emotional choices, whereas adults are maybe like making more selfish choices. I don't know. I'm overgeneralizing, but teenagers make bad choices sometimes. So it is reasonable to have your chosen one making bad choices for the sake of a romance or for any other reason. I'm just saying it's like the proportionality of it, that you don't want to make it look like the romance like should be as big a deal as the main plot. Like, you as a writer don't want to be telling your readers that those are like of equivalent value. At least I don't think you should, because I don't think they are. I mean, again, romance is fine. Relationships are good. You should have people in your life that you care about, but are you really going to say that saving the world and getting the guy at 16 are equivalent goals?
No,
you know,
it might feel to your main character, they might feel because of emotions almost proportionate, but teenagers still have rational thought. So a teenager still knows like saving the world is more important, even if my heart is completely torn between the two. So let your character feel that battle. But as you're telling the story should reflect more quest, less romance, at least in like what's presented, because otherwise it's confusing. Like, you're confusing the genres, and it's a little bit like unsettling as a reader, because you don't really know what kind of book you've just picked up now.
Right. Yeah. You're confused, and you don't want to do that.
No. I think, and it just tends to affect the quality, because you can either do typically like you can do a romance really well, or you could do a fantasy really well. And if you try and do both, I mean, romantic fantasy is, like that's a common genre. I'm really more like you can do like a romance heavy main plot, or you can do like a chosen one main plot. If you try and do both together,
I think they're just going to compete too much.
They're just kind of in competition. So you can do them really well separately. Together, they just can't. One of them has to take precedence, and that either one can, that's fine, but just know which one you're making take precedence, why, and do your best to make the craft like as good as possible to support it. Just be aware of how it'll change it. I think that there's more potential for like a truly excellent, like excellently crafted story where the chosen one trope takes precedence over romance, because like you said, it should. You can still make a great story the other way. Like, I don't think it's like a right or wrong thing. I think it's just know like what the potential for your story is. I think the potential is just going to be higher for for romance to be the lesser plot.
Right. Just be aware of how they're going to compete, and then make sure that you're not clashing them. Make sure that you're like blending them into the story together, which is kind of an ambiguous thing to say. I don't know.
Well, I think you can kind of picture your audience. I mean, whether you are writing to try and be like really successful, make a lot of money, get published, or just because like you kind of have an idea like who will be reading your book, because it might be somebody like you and like what you like to read. I think that we typically probably write what we like to read. So like, if you love romance and you're writing this and you're picturing the people writing this, like the people reading your book are like shipping different characters together, and you're thinking about how they're going to react to the romance, then maybe romance, that's your strength and you need to go more romance heavy. If that's not, if you're not picturing your readers like shipping the characters together and being really into the romance, then maybe you need to be like, okay, I need to really intentionally make the romance a subplot, not like equal to the chosen one plot, because that's clearly not what you're trying to write to. So just like, it's just part of knowing who you're writing to also, which is like almost a whole different episode, but it can help you figure out how to, I feel like, prioritize.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to, I think, when you think about your own book, what is your favorite element of it?
Yeah.
And lean into that, because your audience is going to sense that. And no book is going to be for everyone. If you're like, romance is my thing, it is what I love about this book, some people aren't going to like that. They're going to want more world or magic or adventure or exploration or battles or whatever. People are going to want different things, but lean into the thing that you love about the story, because then it's going to come across in the best form for the people that want that out of their books. So
I agree.
Yeah.
I have another thought on the chosen one trope, which is that I think when your chosen one character, when it involves them having like a special power or talent or knowledge or role or something that other people don't have, I think that there should be some implication that they could lose it too, or that like at the end of the book, when their purpose is done, they've fulfilled the prophecy, that they don't have that anymore. Because that's also part of what makes them feel like a completely normal person who just happens to be the chosen one. Like, I think that that's just like so satisfying. It's kind of like a character fulfills the prophecy and then that magical power that they had goes away because they don't need it anymore. So it like kind of like humanizes them again at the end, which is great, because typically the chosen one, by the time they like reach the climax, are like really badass and not as relatable. And we've been with them the whole time, so we see their growth and understand it, and it's awesome. And we're like, gosh, they're so cool. But then if they lose that, like that special supernatural element that made them so cool and badass, it turns them back into a normal human. And it kind of like finishes on a, wow, it really could be anyone kind of note. So I just think that that's something to keep in mind, because also then it's kind of like, well, great, now they've got this magical power, but there's nothing to like do with it. What are they going to do with it now? Like just go live in the suburbs? I don't think so. So I just think that that's something to think about.
Yeah, it's also a sacrifice, right? That the chosen one should have to give something up. I mean, if it's just a matter of training a couple hours a day, or I don't know, a lot of hours a day, and then defeating the bad guy, and you don't have to give anything up, if you didn't sacrifice relationships, if you didn't sacrifice, like some kind of physical aspect of your health, some kind of magical ability, then it almost feels too easy. And I do think there's kind of this wave of people on TikTok that are like, I don't want them to lose their magic because I want them to stay special. And it's like, they were can still be special. Yeah. That's not the thing that made them special. Losing that isn't necessarily going to change that, because what was important about them all along was the kind of person they were and the choices they made, not their powers.
I think that's what people like about the chosen one trope so much when it's done right. That's why I keep like pounding. They need to be relatable. They need to be realistic, not too perfect, not too bumbly, a relatable person, because like, that's what's so great. That's why a lot of the stories that do the chosen one trope so well, at the end, the thing is done. They lose the magical power. They lose the thing that made them quote unquote the chosen one. And then you realize that this person that you thought was so amazing and badass, this is the exact same person minus that magical or supernatural element. And you're like, that's a completely normal person who did the coolest things. I'm a normal person. I can do the coolest things. And that's the whole point. That's the entire catharsis of the chosen one trope. So I don't usually like have big feelings about like TikTok arguments, but that one makes me a little bit mad, because I'm like, you've missed the entire point of the chosen one trope.
Because like, I mean, spoilers. I hope everyone has read Shadow and Bone by now. If you haven't, spoilers for the end. I really love that Alina lost her power at the end.
Yeah.
I love that, because
I did too.
Now, and it's a struggle for her, right? You read that and you're like, oh my gosh, that sucks. This has been like her whole life. For how long? And it's what made her special. She thinks she went so long without it for her whole life. By the time she finally masters it, now it's gone. But it like gives me chills, and I'm like, but she sacrificed it for the greater good. And because she made that choice and she wanted to do it. And I love that. And if you look at something like Harry Potter, he doesn't sacrifice his powers because his ability was never like, his thing was not that he had like any peak ability. He had like, he was kind of on the same level as everyone else. But he sacrifices the Elder Wand because he doesn't want that power. He doesn't want the ability to do the things that it gives him the ability to do. And so those sacrifices, whether they're natural consequences of their like last stand, or if it's something they choose to get rid of at the end, I love that, because it just makes it feel like a more epic story. And I love the sacrifice, and I like that it means their story continues on, but maybe not in the way they would have anticipated. So I love it.
I agree. I think a lot of the things that those stories have in common too is like Shadow and Bone, Harry Potter. There's an epilogue at the end of the last book where it kind of shows you a glimpse of these characters living these maybe they're much more normal, but totally fulfilling lives. And you do have to be
Yes.
really good at, I feel like, crafting the epilogue, because you don't want it to be like, oh, what a letdown, other life is boring. You want it to be like, there is just like good and great and fulfilling things in their lives. And even though they don't have whatever that was that made them quote unquote better than everyone else, like they're still the same person that did all that cool stuff. They still have the same potential to do amazing things and to have a great
Right.
life. And so it's just like so cathartic. I mean, I'm all about superpowers. So when Alina lost hers, I was like, no, I would be crushed. And you should feel that way. And it's okay to feel that way as the writer and as the reader when you're reading or writing about somebody losing that element that was part of them being the chosen one in that story. Like, but they're the same character. It should hurt. It should be like, no, I don't want to lose that. That's the whole point, because then but then I think you really have to follow up with an epilogue of some kind, or some kind of
they're okay.
Yeah, like show us that not only are they okay, they're doing great, like they're thriving, because it was never about being the chosen one. That whoever they were at the beginning they already had the potential to be all of that, and has nothing to do with that magical power,
that hasn't gone away.
Ability. Yeah, it was about the way that their character developed along the way, and the challenges they faced made them who they are, and now they're a person who can live this amazing, fulfilling life, even if there's nothing supernatural about it. So
yeah,
I think that's great.
Yeah, and something like Harry Potter, because I love Harry Potter, so I'm going to talk about it a lot. Harry becomes an Auror, right? So he like catches dark wizards. So it's like defeating Voldemort didn't fix all of the evil in the world. There's still stuff to fix. And Harry has taken all of those things that made him capable of defeating Voldemort, and he has channeled them into a similar career now. And he has a family, and he's raising that family and raising kids that are going to go into the world and be the kind of people that would stop Voldemort, right?
Yeah.
And I'm tearing up, which is stupid. This book is so old. And I just love that, that like all of that coming together. And I think what's great about the chosen one trope is that it makes you feel like you can fulfill this really awesome purpose, and you totally can. But there is also an element that most of us are going to fulfill very quote unquote small purposes, that the things we do in life are not going to be recorded in history. They're not going to be, we're not all going to be Martin Luther King. We're not all going to be, these big heroes. And that's great. That's okay, because the people that are doing the small things are the people that make the difference, just day to day. And that is also really important. And so showing that hero that did this big thing is now also moving on to do maybe smaller things, like smaller scale, or just perceived smaller things. Yeah, that can be really useful in showing your readers, particularly if they're young adults or middle grade, that kind of stuff is also really valuable. And you shouldn't be ashamed if you don't achieve anything big in life. It is awesome also to achieve little small things every day. Yeah. So that's just my rant about that.
I agree. Well, I think what they all have in common, the ones that like really conclude like the chosen one tropes in such a satisfying way, are the ones where it's not about what the character's doing afterwards. It's about who they're with and the kind of person that they have become due to everything that they've been through. Because that really is what can make or break like how much you're enjoying life and like what you get out of life here. Like at the end of, spoilers again for Shadow and Bone, at the end of that series, Mal and Alina opened an orphanage, which is where they grew up. And it's, I mean, it sounds like kind of like a big thing. Oh my God, they opened an orphanage, but like they grew up in it. And in that setting, it actually is very mundane, especially everything that compared to like that they've been through. Right. But it's so satisfying because they get to be together. They get to help all of these children. Their friends still come to see them. Like she has a couple little mementos from their past, but she's living this new life. And she's this person who knows what she's capable of because of what she's been through, and has a goal and dreams for the future that maybe do or don't have anything to do with what she's like already been through. Like she's still living the chosen one's life, and importance and value doesn't end just because they're not the quote unquote chosen one anymore. And showing that at the end somehow is just like, God, the most satisfying thing as a reader, to think like, okay, just because I'm like working in my garden and like doing marketing writing for some company doesn't mean that my life is just like so freaking lame. I mean, am I fighting dragons? No. Would that be awesome? Yes. But at the end of the day, what's going to make me feel satisfied as a person is going to be how I let the challenges influence me along the way, and who I pour my time into, and who I build my life with. So, I mean, that is just true. Like we can't live in a world where there like are real dragons to fight all of the time. And we might not have a sword, or, we might not have magical power to fight whatever it is and be the quote unquote chosen one. But you're still just as important as any of the chosen ones. And that's what I love about this trope, that any of us could be, and that any of us can have the same kind of ending that they have. And then it's not about some specific thing that makes you special, that we all have this equal potential to do amazing things. And I think it's awesome.
I think another great thing off of that is that there are so many different kinds of chosen ones. So even like you're saying, we're not all just like this big special person, but maybe you are just in a very particular area of life, right? Like if you're going to be a lawyer, or you're going to be a writer, or you're going to be something like that, like you can be really, really good at that one thing, and that can make a big difference. And so the thing, you have to work at it, you have to put effort into it, but the thing that makes you special can be different from what makes someone else special. And then they can both work together to make the world a better place.
Yeah, exactly.
So I also love that.
I love it. We want dark aurors out. We want aurors to catch dark wizards out there. We want people running orphanages. Like, just think of like, these characters are still contributing even when they're not saving the world. So like, even if you're not saving the world, it doesn't mean you're not still doing great things for it. And I love it. I just like, I can just gush about the chosen one trope. It's just so good.
Love it.
I know.
There's so many wrong ways to do it, but when it's done well, it's just the most powerful thing.
It really is. I think that's I think that's why it's a favorite still, despite it being done so wrong. Because when it's done right, oh my God, it's like the most like motivating and exciting thing that you can read. It's just so damn good.
Yep. Yeah. It just always makes you feel like, okay, now I can go out into the world and make a difference, or do that thing that I really want to do and that can really benefit people. It's very motivating. It's very inspiring.
It is. Yeah, it is. So, anything else you want to say about the chosen one trope?
No, I think that was all I had to say.
Sweet. Well, how's your writing going?
Great. I opened that query letter.
Oh yeah.
It was Schrodinger's cat last week. It was a rejection. So, fun.
Fun. That's always nice.
Yep. It was less crushing because I opened it a couple days later. So I don't know why that helped. Sometimes I just have to let it sit. It's kind of a weird thing with query letters. It's like you want to open them immediately because what if they want stuff and you're like, I want to be on top of this so they don't get weird about it. But then also, if you just give yourself a couple of days, sometimes that can just help you calm down. That's my odd piece of advice for today.
I can't relate to that at all. I open it right away. I cannot relate.
Or you can be Ash, whatever works for you.
I want to rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah. Other than that, I'm just slogging away at my draft that I'm working on. It's interesting. So like there's this thing going around TikTok about how like when you're writing your current work in progress, you'll get all these like cool new ideas and you're really tempted to go off and do all of those. And I've always been the kind of person that is incapable of that. Like once I start writing something, I have to finish it and I can't move on until I finish that idea. And I don't know if this is a positive or a negative or a neutral. That's where I am right now, where I still really love this story. Yeah. And I want to finish it. But I keep hitting these like really small dead ends. Like, how do I transition to this scene and and I can't just make a note to come back to it later. I can't, that's just not the kind of person I am. So I have to wait until I have the idea to get me forward. And there are a couple of other ideas going on in my head now. I'm like, gosh, I want to start planning for them, but I can't, because if I get distracted, I will hate myself and regret that for the rest of my life. So I'm kind of caught. I'm like, gosh, I just want to kind of like rush through and finish it, but I also want it to be a good first draft. I already know I'm going to have to go back and fix so many things, but I've been keeping very good notes and I feel confident that I can do that, but I'm also really excited about other ideas. So it's a weird place for me. I've never been like this before.
That's me all the time. I so relate to that. It's all the time for me. But I also like to check things off. So I love to finish things too. I just don't always.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I picked up some more editing work recently, and every time I do this, I'm like, hooray, because money is great. Then I'm also like, hooray, editing's fun, I should do this more. And then I'm like, wait, I haven't worked on my own book because I write all day for work, or I'm doing like marketing type stuff along with writing all day for work. And then we do podcast stuff. And now I'm editing other people's books and their query letters. And then I'm like, well, the day is literally over. Like, it's dark. It's been dark for hours. Do I really have mental energy to start writing my own book again? And the answer is usually no, but I'm trying this new thing where I like set boundaries for how long I let myself work on other projects throughout the day. Like I've been waking up early to go work on the garden, and I let myself work on the garden for 1 hour in the morning before work, no more than an hour, because I could get out of control and be like, I'm going to finish this whole project today. Because that's typically what I do. In which case I'd go out there and I'd work on my lunch break. I'd go out there and I'd work after work. And then I would like not have any chapters edited, definitely not have written anything. So I like edited 2 chapters last night for one of my clients. And so tonight after this, I'm going to edit the episode real quick, or as quickly as I can. And then I'm going to write a little bit more, but also I'm like not setting like hardcore. If I don't edit a whole chapter a day of my book that I'm trying to rewrite, then I'm garbage. And so I'm just like scene by scene. I'm like, because if I stop in the middle of a scene, I'm pretty much screwed. I'll forget how I was rewriting it, and I have to start over. And so I'm basically like, if I even can just rewrite 1 scene a day, or even like a few scenes a week, like that still is so much more than I was doing before. So, and it also keeps me moving, because if I go too long without working on it, I forget what I'm doing. So so I have been. So I don't think I did last night because I was working on chapters instead, but the night before I did work some more on rewriting my book, which is good. So I had to like insert a whole new scene, which was new, and I haven't done that before and I don't really like it. I found like a couple more like problematic elements to the story. So I'm keeping this whole list of notes that just always grows at the end of the book, where I'm like, go back and make sure that this is clarified. Go back and include this detail in these places just to make sure that this makes sense. And so I'm like, any tiny little hole that might have been before, like, is good enough, because I have that attitude about a lot of things. Now I'm like, no, it's not. I can't let it be. Because like for like something like truly like publish, you want to be like bestseller level quality, like you really can't have any plot holes. And that's really hard for me, because I'm typically a good enough type person. Like if it's finished, I'm happy. I don't really, the quality on the inside, like I want it to be decent, but I'm okay without it being like 100% perfect. But I think I need to be a little bit more picky about that, because I think that's why I keep getting close to people being like, we really like the book and we considered it, and now we just don't quite want it. And I'm like, why? Maybe it's because like 1 or 2 of those little holes, maybe if I'd fixed them in the first place, then there would like be no hesitation. I mean, that's really hopefully speaking, because there's a lot of really amazing books that people are trying to get published that aren't getting published all the time. But also it's like, because I'm taking it in such like smaller bite-sized chunks, like at least like just my goal is just to finish rewriting the scene, where to say I want this scene to not have any kind of holes in it is like a lot more manageable. It's not so intimidating. So I'm just overall trying to like make my life less intimidating. Like because I tend to just bite off giant chunks of whatever project I'm doing, whether it's writing or something else. So I'm trying to like actually like do bite-sized amounts of everything, just in a consistent way, so that I can consistently work on things. And even if it takes me longer, it doesn't actually in the long run take me longer, because instead of just burning myself out on one project, like, and then having to take a break before I remember to get back to another one, I'm just consistently working on a few different things at once, like the garden and writing and all that good stuff. So hooray.
Yeah, that's a good philosophy.
I'm trying. I'm very much like I like to check stuff off my list, and I tend to like really hardcore get everything done at once. It's killing me a little bit to only work on my garden like an hour a day, because I'm like, I just want to have it ready so I can put my plants in the ground. Like this is killing me. But also I go to sleep at like 10:30 instead of like 1 a.m, because I mean, I'm still working until like 9 or 9:30 on everything. And then I like allow myself to like relax for about an hour. And that is unheard of in my recent life.
That's good.
So that's really good for me.
Yeah.
That's my updates.
Cool.
Yeah. Let's see. Anything else you want to share with the peeps?
Nope, I think that was it. I was trying to think.
Sweet.
Nope,
I know.
That's it.
Well, if you guys want to keep up with us during the week, you certainly can. You can follow us on social media. We're on Instagram and TikTok. We are the Scripturian Society. You can also check out our website, storysirenstudio.com. That's our production company. And you guys, we're going to have some really cool merch up soon, just like I mentioned. If you guys remember our episode where we, Karissa picked the word lacuna as our word of the week. And I was just really into that word. And I think we made a joke about lacuna matata, and that there is your little spoiler for what the merch is going to be about. So it's fun. It's exciting. Thank you, Maddie, again for the design. And we'll probably get those up sometime this week. So go check it out along with our other stuff. That's a great way to support the pod. If you guys want, you can check us out on Patreon as well. That is where we are hosting a free writers group. That means you can go in there, put a comment about whatever kind of writery thought you have, and we will see it and we will reply, and it's all free to do. So check it out. So check that out. Do it. You can also message us on social media or email us at, my cat is literally moving my camera right now. She just walked up and rubbed her head on it. Flora, my darling, please don't. She's walking on my typewriter. Okay. She was literally about to step on the keys. That's not a website. Can you guys hear my typewriter? Anyways, oh no, now the other cat's about to jump down. Oh! I bet Javi's home. I bet that they hear him in the other room or something.
The horror in your eyes was just so funny. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
Well, I never know if she's going to jump on it. She's going to jump and break something. Anyways, you guys can email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com, or you can message us on Instagram or on TikTok about your writing thoughts, or if there's something you want us to talk about on an episode, if you have a topic idea for our episode, if you have a word of the week suggestion, whatever it may be. If you want to talk chosen one tropes, if you want to tell me I'm wrong about everything, you wouldn't be the first. I've heard it from my grandmother plenty of times, so come at me. I don't mind. But so you guys can keep up with us during the week, so please go do that. Go follow us. If you guys enjoy the pod, please rate us below, and we will see you guys next week as always. So until then, keep writing,
and we'll see you on the next page.